why we are here this morning at this to address the press conference on behalf of the temple.
Thank you, Mr. Okay. Salam sejahtera, selamat pagi. Waalaikum salam. Tujuan kami mengadakan sidang media ini adalah untuk menyelamatkan kuil kami yang mempunyai legasi lebih 100 tahun. Kami telah terima tekanan untuk mengosongkan tanah kuil. Ini bermakna kami akan terpaksa merobohkan kuil kami. Sedikit fakta dan latar belakang mengenai perkara ini. Terdapat kuil di kawasan ini sejak tahun 1893, iaitu sebelum merdeka lagi. Kuil yang berada sekarang mempunyai artefak peninggalan reliks daripada kuil asal yang lokasinya hanya beberapa meter dari kuil ini. Pada tahun 2008, kami telah diarahkan oleh pihak DBKL untuk memindahkan kuil ke kawasan lokasi sekarang, iaitu lot 328. Setelah pemindahan tapak kuil tersebut berlaku, suatu upacara penyucian besar Kumbha Abhishekam dilakukan dengan kerjasama dan bantuan pihak berkuasa, khususnya pihak DBKL. Namun tanpa pengetahuan jawatan kuasa kuil, kerajaan telah menjual tanah di kawasan tersebut, termasuk tanah atas mana kuil didirikan kepada sebuah syarikat swasta. Ini berlaku pada tahun 2014. Dan sejak 2016 terdapat beberapa percubaan oleh pihak kerajaan dan syarikat swasta tersebut untuk memaksa kuil ini berpindah keluar daripada kawasan ini. Ini adalah amat tidak adil kepada kami dan komuniti besar masyarakat India di kawasan Masjid India yang merupakan pengunjung dan penganut kuil ini. Kuil ini juga merupakan suatu pusat kebudayaan di kawasan Masjid India. Terdapat kelas tarian, Bharatanatyam, nyanyian, sanggidam serta dewaram dan yoga yang diadakan pada setiap minggu di kuil untuk kanak-kanak dan dewasa. Jika kuil ini dikeluarkan daripada kawasan atau dirobohkan, ia akan menghapuskan identiti masyarakat majmuk di kawasan Masjid India. Pihak kerajaan melalui DBKL telah membuat tawaran bagi satu kawasan alternatif yang mana saiznya adalah separuh saiz tapak kuil sekarang. Dan tapak tersebut jauh daripada kawasan Masjid India, ianya langsung tidak sesuai. Walaupun rundingan berterusan dengan wakil-wakil DBKL dan kerajaan, kami terkejut apabila diberitahu suatu majlis pecah tanah akan dijalankan bagi melancarkan pembinaan masjid tersebut. Kami diberitahu majlis ini akan dirasmikan oleh Perdana Menteri pada 27 Mac 2025, iaitu dalam masa seminggu lagi. Kami gagal memahami bagaimana pecah tanah boleh dilakukan apabila rundingan mengenai status kuil belum diputuskan. Sebenarnya tidak perlu kuil dirobohkan. Terdapat tanah bersebelahan kuil atau mana masjid boleh didirikan. Kami mengalu-alukan pembinaan masjid di tapak bersebelahan kuil di mana ia juga akan mencerminkan sikap saling menghormati toleransi masyarakat Malaysia. Tidak perlu untuk merobohkan kuil kami. Kami percaya ini adalah penyelesaian terbaik bagi perkara ini. Akhir sekali, kami hari ini meminta supaya Kerajaan Madani mengambil langkah sewajarnya untuk mengekalkan kuil di lot 328 seperti pada masa sekarang, dan tanah ini digazetkan sebagai tanah kuil kekal. Sekian, terima kasih.
Thank you to Mr. Raj Mohan for the very clear statement of the position. The facts have already been stated very clearly by him. Before Dr. Ambiga will address on the main issues, I just want to address you on what happened this morning. This morning, the Datuk Bandar of Kuala Lumpur, I think Datuk Maimunah,
Yes, Datuk Maimunah.
yes, and I think many officials from the City Hall visited the temple quite of a sudden and met with the temple committee in front of the temple very publicly. They had also invited the media to be there and held a press conference. At the press conference, the mayor had handed over this particular letter to the temple committee. It is addressed to the chairman of the temple committee, right? We have examined the letter, which we have just got, and there are a few matters here that I need to briefly address. Now, first of all, I am glad that the City Hall clearly states in this letter, and it's also come out in the news I think just now, that City Hall, which means the government, because DBKL is part of the government, yeah? That City Hall, DBKL, has given a commitment not to demolish the temple, right? Pending negotiations. That comes out in the letter, and that has been stated by the mayor herself, right? There are some other matters in the letter that I have to. There are some other matters in the letter that I have to address now, because they are not accurate. Okay, what is stated in the City Hall letter is not accurate on some other matters. Firstly, the letter says that Dewan Bandaraya Kuala Lumpur mengambil maklum berhubung cadangan pembinaan sebuah masjid di atas tanah milik sebuah syarikat swasta yang terletak di Jalan Masjid India, Kuala Lumpur. This suggests that the government and City Hall had nothing to do with this construction, and they had just taken note of it. That's not accurate. I think I have to clear the inaccuracy. In fact, City Hall is the one that gave the development order for the construction on 12 February 2020. This is the DO that was granted by City Hall 5 years ago. You see? So in short, what I'm saying is that the government and City Hall were well aware of the proposed construction on the site of the temple. So that is not accurate. Now, the letter also further says that the project itu merupakan cadangan oleh syarikat swasta berkenaan selaku pemilik tanah yang sah dan bukan daripada pihak kerajaan. Now, this is also not accurate. It is not a full and frank disclosure of the real facts in this case. The facts you heard just now, let me just pick out the important thing. The temple has existed in that area in one form or another since 1893. Right? It has served, a temple in that area, in that locality, has served the community since over 100 years. And some of the artifacts and relics from the original temple from the 1890s is kept within the current existing structure of the temple, right? So that is the situation. In 2008, City Hall, the DBKL, the government, asked the temple to move to the current site. So they moved to the current site on the behest and request and in fact instructions of City Hall and the government, right? Having then been given the permission to reconstruct and carry out the daily activities in the temple, and again it became a community temple. In 2014, the land was sold by the government to a private company. Now, I must stress here that the temple was never informed about this sale. They sold the land with the temple, even though the temple was on top of it, to the private company. Hence the issues that have arisen in this case. The temple only found out in 2016 that the land had been sold to a third party, right? So, in other words, the land became tanah swasta because of the actions of the then government and DBKL, right? It is not a case of the temple going and building on somebody's private land and insisting on saying that. That is not the case, right? And I feel that the letter from the City Hall gives the wrong perception on that. So we just want to correct that that factual statement in that letter. And I think also the reason why I am taking pains to correct that is that we cannot have a narrative which says that, look, this is private land, it's owned by a private party, and therefore you must leave. This is not a commercial property. This is a temple, a place of worship that has very deep roots in the community in the area. It is also a cultural center where classical dance and other activities take place. So it cannot be treated like a commercial property. The owner wants to, well, after the sale, the current person owning it wants to develop, therefore you have got to leave. It cannot be treated that way, and the government has a duty and responsibility to come forward and resolve the matter, because it is they who sold the land to the private company back in 2014. So to blame the temple committee in any way would be completely wrong, right? And it also disregards the historical development of how places of worship were built within communities who were working hard to build up this country. You know, hard-working ordinary people building up this country, carrying out their activities decades and decades ago, who required places of worship, which was encouraged by governments, successive governments, even during colonial times, right? And that is how the temple ended up where it is and in this predicament now, because they were set up by the people in the community as a place of worship long ago. So that is the second factual matter that I wanted to correct in the letter. Now the third thing, of course, there is a commitment given. I think Dr. Ambiga will address that, the commitment not to demolish that has just been given through this letter. Now I think that's what I wanted to clear up. Can I hand it over to Dr. Ambiga?
Sure. Thank you, Sureen, for that. We've actually done a bit of a chart so you can get the dates correct. I think the fact of the matter is the temple has been there more than 100 over years, longer than the current owners. They've been on the land so much longer than the current owners. And as I understand it, when it was alienated to the current, right? And there is such a thing, and it is a legal, hopefully we don't have to take these legal arguments, but there is such a thing as an interest in the land, an equitable interest in the land. So we would argue that in fact, the private developer who has, to whom the land was alienated, takes it subject to the temple's rights. They must have known the temple was there. Everybody knew the temple was there. So you cannot just ignore a temple who has been there for so long. As I say, it's more than 100 years, more than the current owners have been there. Now, there's something very unique about Masjid India. Very unique mix of people. You have largely Indian, but you have Indian Muslims, and you have, of course, Hindus. It also serves people who come from overseas, because there are hotels there, and they live in the area. So for years and years and years and years, everybody has been coexisting peacefully. Peacefully. Why in heaven's name does this government want to interfere with that? That was my first thought. But of course, this letter that was rushed over to the temple committee this morning promises that it will all be done, and they go into issues of, let me be clear, they recognize freedom of religion. They've said that in their letter. They also want to help this DBKL to find the best way forward so that there is no discrimination between the races. I'm glad they've given that commitment, and I agree with that position. We agree with that position. We agree that this is freedom of religion cannot be breached, cannot be undermined in any way. Now, and they also have promised that any step that is taken will be in accordance with freedom of religion as has been enshrined in our federal constitution. So they're very well aware of our constitutional rights, all right? Which is good. Apart from that, DBKL also, they say they have found another location, Baru, etc., and they hope things will move smoothly. But I would like to add that they have to look at the flow in Masjid India. What is the characteristic of Masjid India? They have to look at all those factors. They have promised not to demolish. I'm not sure if that's an absolute promise. I take it as an absolute promise. That would be the best solution. that there will be no demolition, full stop. That's what we would like to see. But if they have other plans, then of course we also have some very, very constructive suggestions, which my little friends here will also, sorry, not in court, which my friends here will explain. The suggestions, the very, very workable suggestions that we have. So we're hoping if there is to be a discussion, of course for us the ideal situation is no, no destruction of the removal of the kuil. But we also have some other suggestions that we want Dewan Bandaraya, if they believe truly in freedom of religion and respect, we would like them to consider. Now, let me be fair to DBKL. Through the years, they have always facilitated all religions. You know, in the chariots, when on Vesak Day, when there is a chariot, or of course our famous Taipusam, etc., they have always facilitated. That is the Dewan Bandaraya that I know for years. They have never done anything to destroy the mutual respect. So I would say this is what we would like to see in this case. Do not destroy the mutual respect that we all have for each other's cultures and religion. So it's not just about religion, it's also cultural. As Suren has pointed out, they have dance classes, etc., that is going on. So there is a community that has been built up there. You can't now tell them all to go to some other place which is far away. So I think this is something we must be hopeful. I take the recognition of the rights under the Constitution very seriously, and I'm glad DBKL takes it just as seriously. I will now hand over to Zaid from Lawyers for Liberty, and maybe also Wong, who have some very constructive ideas moving forward. Thank you.
Baik, Assalamualaikum dan selamat sejahtera. Baik, jadi rakan-rakan saya di sini dah menitik beratkan ataupun dah mengangkat kenapa kuil Dewi Sri Patra Kaliaman satu kuil yang penting. Dan saya rasa perkara ni, kalau saya cakap semula pun tidak mengapa, kerana itu perkara yang harus dititik beratkan. Kuil Dewi Sri Patra Kaliaman ni telah dibina sejak ataupun tapak kuil ini di kawasan Masjid India telah berada di situ sejak 1893, ya, pre-merdeka, sebelum penubuhan Malaysia itu sendiri. Sejarah penubuhan kuil itu dan tujuan kuil itu untuk serve the community, maknanya ia bukan hanya satu tapak yang bersejarah, tapi juga tapak yang penting untuk komuniti tersebut. Ia dah sebati dengan komuniti. Seperti yang Cik Raj Mohan ada sebut sebentar tadi, tempat itu merupakan hub komuniti di mana bukan hanya tempat untuk beribadah, tapi juga tempat untuk komuniti berkumpul, membuat aktiviti yang berkaitan ibadah ataupun tidak. Jadi perkara ini tidak harus diendahkan, ya, tidak diendahkan. Pun kalaulah, ya, kuil itu diroboh, ia bermakna kita menafikan identiti kawasan tersebut, identiti komuniti tersebut, ya, yang telah sekian lama duduk di situ sebelum penubuhan Malaysia lagi. Solusi mudah. Tidak perlu pun sebenarnya kuil itu dirobohkan. Kuil itu ataupun ada tapak di sebelah kuil itu sebenarnya yang cukup besar untuk kita buat masjid. Malah ada juga tapak yang berhampiran, yang kosong. Kalaulah katalah tapak itu sendiri tak cukup, boleh panjangkan ke arah tapak blok tanah kosong itu sendiri, kan? Baik. Ya. Ya. Ya, nampak di sebelah di sini yang petak hijau ni adalah tapak kuil itu sekarang, dan di sebelah itu adalah blok parkir, ya. Blok parkir ni jauh lagi besar daripada tapak kuil itu. Jadi, kalau nak bina masjid, binalah di sini. tak perlu robohkan kuil tu. Malah kalau ini pun tidak cukup, di kawasan sini di bawah di petak kuning ini pun satu blok kosong yang boleh diguna pakai, kiranya perlukan lah tapak masjid untuk lebih besar. Secara ringkas tidak ada keperluan untuk kita runtuhkan kuil itu untuk membina masjid. Ini it's not good for the masjid to start out on the grounds by which the previous or other place of worship was destroyed and demolished. Ia tidak selari dengan konsep menghibah, dengan kemakmuran masyarakat, prinsip-prinsip yang penting dalam negara kita, nation kan, perkara yang penting yang selalu diangkat oleh pihak kerajaan. Dan saya percaya juga ini bertentangan dengan prinsip badani lah yang selalu disebut oleh pihak kerajaan. Jadi kesimpulannya, ada solusi mudah di hadapan kita bina je masjid tu di sebelah kuil. Tidak ada apa salah pun. Tidak ada apa salah dari segi agama untuk kita bina masjid di sebelah kuil. Tidak boleh orang nak solat, nak sembahyang, apa yang perlu hanya perlu menghadap ke kiblat di tempat yang bersih, itu sajalah. Jadi masjid tu di sebelah kuil, apa masalah dia? Tidak ada apa kekangan daripada segi agama, saya percaya, dan tidak akan ada orang Melayu ataupun orang Islam yang akan tidak bersetuju, yang akan berkata masjid tidak boleh dibina di sebelah kuil ataupun mana-mana tempat ibadah yang bukan beragama Islam. Dan ini bukan perkara asing. Di kawasan rumah saya sendiri, di setapak itu ada kuil, dan juga di sebelah jalan tu ada masjid atau surau lah. Jadi tak ada masalah pun, tak ada pun hiruk-pikuk di kawasan itu, dan orang boleh orang Islam boleh pergi beribadah di surau atau masjid, dan orang Hindu pun boleh pergi beribadah di kuil mereka. Jadi apa isu? Tidak ada apa-apa isu. Yang penting ini sekarang adalah kita jangan tidak menghormati komuniti setempat. Kita kena akui kepentingan kuil tersebut, sejarah dia, bagaimana dia sebati dengan komuniti, apakah maksud kuil itu kepada komuniti setempat. Kalau kerajaan ini ingin mengangkat kebebasan beragama seperti yang dijamin dalam perlembagaan persekutuan, ingin dan juga ingin mengangkat prinsip muhibah, dan juga ingin mewar-warkan bahawa Malaysia ini satu negara yang majmuk, kita kena akui kepentingan dan juga hak orang bukan Islam juga untuk beribadah. Tidak perlu solusi yang mudah, ambil solusi yang mudah. Ini saya sebelah kuil tersebut. Saya serahkan kepada saudara Wong.
Wong Kukuy daripada Mandiri, which is a youth empowerment organisation. He's very well known activist.
Selamat pagi. Terima kasih kawan-kawan, dan juga terima kasih kepada rakan-rakan media yang sudi hadir pada pagi ini untuk bersama dengan kami. Jadi seperti yang dikatakan tadi, kuil ini pun sudah berusia lebih daripada 100 tahun dan lebih tua daripada umur pembentukan Malaysia, dan merupakan sebahagian daripada sejarah Malaysia. Warisan keagamaan seperti ini haruslah dipelihara kerana ia mencerminkan kepelbagaian budaya dan keharmonian Malaysia. Jadi kerajaan, bagi saya kan, kerajaan ataupun pihak berkuasa sepatutnya mengadakan perbincangan yang lebih mendalam sebelum membuat apa-apa keputusan. Ini yang seperti yang saya dimaklumkan, perbincangan masih berjalan tapi sudah mengambil keputusan untuk buat pecah tanah pada 27 hari bulan, sedangkan belum ada apa-apa keputusan pun yang dibuat, keputusan yang adil kepada dua-dua pihak. Jadi kena ada dialog dan konsultasi dari bersama dengan komuniti kuil dan juga kepada pemegang baru yang lain untuk mendapatkan jalan penyelesaian yang lebih adil lah bagi saya. Jadi prinsip keagamaan ni kan kita di Malaysia ni haruslah dan wajib untuk kita hormati seperti mana yang termaktub dalam perlembagaan persekutuan. Jika komuniti agama tertentu, mana-mana komuniti agama, tidak seperti yang kuil, mungkin ada gereja, masjid dan tokong dan sebagainya. Jika kehilangan tempat beribadat dan tanpa ada persetujuan ataupun ada alternatif lain yang boleh diberikan oleh kerajaan, ini bercanggah kan dengan nilai-nilai hak asasi dan keadilan sosial. Jadi di sini memang ada unsur pencabulan hak jika saya lihat dalam isu ini. Saya mau bagi contoh sebab saya asal daripada Sabah. Di Sabah, masjid dengan gereja di bersebelah-sebelah tidak pernah ada masalah sedikit pun. Sebagai contoh, macam mana keharmonian dia. Bila kalau hari raya Aidilfitri, gereja akan buka seluas-luasnya pintu untuk para penganut agama Islam untuk parking kereta mereka dan menjaga lalu lintas dan sebagainya untuk kepada rakan-rakan Muslim. Dan sama juga kepada kalau pada hari Christmas, rakan-rakan Muslim akan buka masjid dengan luas-luasnya untuk mereka parking kenderaan dan menjaga lalu lintas kepada kawan-kawan penganut Kristian untuk menyambut Christmas. Jadi kenapa kita tak boleh buat di sini kan? Ironi kan, kita satu negara, satu bangsa Malaysia. Tapi kenapa di belah blok Borneo tidak mempunyai isu sebegini, tapi di Semenanjung agak menyedihkan bila mau tubuhkan satu rumah ibadat, tapi rumah ibadat yang lain harus dikorbankan, harus dipindah dan sebagainya. Sedangkan ianya adalah satu mempunyai sejarah dan satu keunikan di Malaysia ni. Jadi harapan saya janganlah isu-isu sebegini boleh menjejaskan perpaduan dan keharmonian Malaysia yang kita bina selama ini. Jadi itu serba sedikit saya akan menyerahkan semula kepada Surit.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we've heard from everyone, and if I may round up, this is the current position, our position, is that the temple has very clearly stated that they would prefer to stay where they are, and they would be happy to coexist with any other construction, and at the same time, our colleagues here, I think very eloquently, put forth a very good solution to this issue, right? I think it was a very good solution put forward by them. But let me also say that whilst this matter is being discussed further, we are very glad that today, at least at the 11th hour, as you can see through this news, they have given a very public commitment. This is a public commitment from the government, not to demolish until this matter is satisfactorily resolved, right? So there should be no demolition or movement towards that until the matter is resolved according to everyone's satisfaction, of all parties' satisfaction. So for that we are grateful, and I also want to remind that this was a public undertaking. This was a public undertaking given by the City Hall, and of course consequently by the government, and City Hall is part of the government, in a public manner in front of the temple this very morning. And we are confident that having given such a public undertaking, that the government will abide by it, and that they will take proactive steps to resolve this situation. Thank you.
Yeah. Any questions or?
Yeah, can we open up the questions?
Saya nak tanya mengenai pemilikan tanah tu, yang lot 238 kuil tu.
328.
Ya, 328 dengan yang tuan cadangkan tu parking dengan satu lagi tu. Adakah pemilik ketiga-tiga parcel lain ni sama? Pemilik yang sama?
Pemilik, pemilik parking lot di bersebelahan dengan temple kuil adalah dimiliki oleh syarikat persendirian yang sama. Okey, dan lot di sebelah sini adalah dimiliki oleh kerajaan, iaitu di KL. Okey, bermakna keseluruhan ini adalah available. Okey.
I just wanted to ask, what is the name of the company who actually owns this land?
I mean, you see, our issue here is that the government must take proactive steps, and that they have a duty and responsibility under Constitution to resolve this matter satisfactorily, because it was they that took the step to sell the land to the private company. So it's not about the private company; it's about the presence of the temple in that community for so long, the fact that it is a place of worship, and the fact that the government has a duty to resolve it because of their role in it, including approving the development model. So that is the critical thing. You see?
And I think the name will be disclosed later because we're having a press conference, but it doesn't matter. Surin is right. This is about government action. They're the ones who are supposed to take into account the interests of the whole community. So this is entirely on DBKL and the government. And I think that it's important to know that yes, they have promised that they will not demolish, etc., etc. But they have also said that until the pemindahan is done. Now that is a fait accompli. That is presenting us with a fait accompli where, what is it you're saying? But we have, I mean, we don't want to fight about this. They've said that we will talk. We have a counter suggestion, a very sensible counter suggestion. And this occurs all over the country. And I think they have to be a little bit careful because a lot of people are very concerned about this. I have to tell you that. I've been getting a lot of messages and calls. I'm sure you all know that. That's why you're all here as well. The implications of the manner in which this is handled is very important to the country. So I think it's good. I'm very happy with what they have said in their letter. They recognize everyone's rights. They recognize the constitutional position. Now, I think we need to look at the community itself who's there, the length of time this temple has been there, all of that. You can't throw someone out after 130 years just on a whim, you know, because really at the end of the day, there are other alternatives, which I think they can look at. And we respect that. And I think there are many, right? It's not just, there are many temples and mosques, churches next to each other. It's very doable. And Malaysians are good people, you know, they know how to coexist. And so the importance here is mutual respect and the fact that we can, as Malaysians, coexist. And I don't think it's for the government to tell us that we can't.
So let's say the discussion they then between from the committee of the temple, maybe with the DBKL or the private company, would you consider to, I mean, this is for the sake of bring it to court and things like that. Is there any precedent of this kind of case?
Yes, there are precedents. Also even involving temples, maybe not. But I mean, we don't want to go there. But obviously, if push comes to shove, then yes, we will go to court. And there are precedents in relation to situations like this. But really, this to me is something the community must resolve. The community must resolve. We must, as people of Malaysia, must resolve. We shouldn't have to run to court on this. We shouldn't have to, because the solution is so crystal clear and so doable and easy, good for everyone. Let's put it that way, without having to go to court. When you go to court on issues like this, it just builds up, differences.
Has this solution been presented to the DBKL either in the previous negotiations or this morning itself?
Yes. My understanding from the temple committee is they have suggested it. But unfortunately it has not been taken up.
Yes.
Was there any reasons given?
Before.
Yeah.
Ada morning ya. Okey, Dewan Bandaraya ada jugalah bagi cadangan untuk kuil untuk 7 tempat yang 1 tempat yang mengatakan Sungai Bonus. Tapi itu Sungai Bonus tu kita tak sesuai nak pergi dekat sana. Dalam surat pun kita dah beritahu kita tidak bersetuju. Pasal apa? Itu memang banjir punya tempat. So kita memang tidak bersetuju kita pergi dekat sana.
Tapi cadangan untuk buat di sebelah yang dicadangkan tu, adakah dibangkitkan kepada DBKL dan apa respon DBKL?
Yes. Tapi dalam tadi macam tadi yang okey. Tadi daripada Dewan Bandaraya yang Datuk Sri Maimunah yang datang jumpa sama saya, Masa sekarang kita tengah berbincang, bukan bersetuju. Kita nak tahu kenapa bagi borang tu mungkin kuil nak pindah ke tak ada. Kita bukan tak ada pindah, tapi yang kita nak sekarang macam kita punya site yang beritahulah, kita kuil memang kekal dekat sana, bersebelahan buat masjid lah. So itu kita punya point. Kenapa warga masjid India itu kita nak kena berharmoni.
In other words, he's answered your question in the sense that he even said it this morning to the mayor. That solution was actually mentioned by the president of the temple this morning directly to the mayor in front of the press conference.
Yes.
I think that's actually been recorded by the media who were present this morning.
And actually, we have gone to see the place. You all should see it. It's a beautiful piece of land next to the temple. Both can coexist quite beautifully. Go and see it yourselves, and you will see that it's very reasonable approach to resolving this.
Just to understand, because the land is owned by a private, so is the private company responsible? I mean, can they dictate whatever want to be built on that land? Because I want to see how DBKL can intervene, because that is a private land.
I think DBKL is running this actually, so I think that's something they need to work out.
Right.
You see, we didn't cause the problem. I mean, the temple didn't start this. So if this is the cadangan, and I think it's perfectly valid thing to want to do, then they need to find the solutions as well for the temple. So I don't think it'll be a problem if the government is agreeable. I believe that the private company will also follow suit. I hope. Look, if we discussed it in this room, we would have solved this a long time ago, all right? With Malaysians, that's what I'm trying to say. This is what Malaysians want. So they don't like this confrontation, because nobody wants to live like that, and we've never lived like that, and there is no reason for this to happen. So I think if everybody acts in, together in good faith, with all the principles that they've said that they agree with in their letter, then it can be solved.
The committee has met, this thing has been for many years already. So you met different representatives from different governments. You met the Loga, you met this and that.
Yeah.
Which one is the most promising?
Tapi semua orang dalam bagi apa yang mengatakan dalam cadangan juga, tapi tak ada menyelesaikan masalah ini. So apa yang macam tadi yang Dato' Ambiga dengan kita punya surrender, itulah kita punya requirement, persetujuan. Kita nak berharmoni di tempat yang sama, bukan kita nak bincang pasal pemindahan.
Dalam proses perbincangan tu ada wakil daripada developer, owner of the land.
Tak ada. Developer kita tak ada berbincang, tapi dengan Dewan Bandaraya, dengan yang others MPs, minister, semua dalam perbincangan juga. Tapi tak dapat hitam putih kepada kuil. Tapi kita cuma risau yang ground breaking lah, nanti forced to move lah. So that's the thing lah.
You mentioned the sale happened in 2016. Were the temple authorities aware that talks were being taken place for the sale?
No, absolutely not. They had no
idea.
The sale took place in 2014.
14.
And the temple only got to know about it when they received a letter from DBKL in 2016, about a good 2 years later, informing them that the land had been sold to the third-party company. So it was only 2 years later they found out. They were never involved in any process involving the sale of the land. They had no inkling about it.
So since they became the landowner, really ever come to the temple, just like to meet the...
No.
Tak pernah.
No, satu information pun tak dapat. Kuil kami.
Cuma baru ni baru dia nak inform nak.
Ya, macam tadi cakap 2016 lah. Baru dah started lah.
Since 2016, baru ni baru tahu. Yang diorang nak ada intention to build something.
Yes. And then baru kita dapat tahu bina masjid lah. So kita pun cakap boleh, tapi biarlah kuil pun berada di situ. Kenapa kita nak berharmoni kan?
So nama masjid ni Masjid Madani?
Ya.
When did you first hear about the bila kita dengar plan nak bina masjid sana groundbreaking?
Sudah dah lama jugalah kita dapat tahu, tapi I dah tahulah masjid, tapi sekarang dah masjid Madani lah.
So, I mean, I didn't want to be harsh to
Yes.
the government,
Yes.
but come on, Madani government, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Really, solve this very easily. I'm so surprised that they can't do that. After having walked with all of us, people they know, on the streets for justice, now having the narrative of Madani, which must include justice, which includes inclusivity. Come on, surely the solution is staring at you in the face. Do it, is all I can say.
And can I add to that, that in the 2014, when I was advocating for not to demolish the temple at Jalan Raja Chulan, I was a member of parliament then, and the Prime Minister was the leader of the opposition, and he was fully in support of my efforts to save the temple at Jalan Raja Chulan. So I hope the Prime Minister, if he's listening to this, would show the same spirit that he showed 10 years ago when he supported me during that time, when we were trying to save the Jalan Raja Chulan temple, and he himself supported the saving of that temple in and out of parliament at that time. I hope he can remember that spirit, and I hope he will invoke that spirit again within him.
Saya juga nak tambah kan. Kalau kami pun dengar pasal nama masjid itu Masjid Madani. Saya nak tekankan kat sini, ungkapan Madani itu tidak bermakna jikalau prinsip Madani itu tidak dipraktikkan. So nama itu tak penting, ungkapan frasa tak penting. Kalau betul lah prinsip itu nak diangkat, ya, mendukung prinsip muhibah, kemajukan, kebebasan beragama ataupun menghormati agama lain, solusi yang mudah ada di hadapan mata, ambil. Jangan kaburkan perkara yang tak sepatutnya dengan menggunakan ungkapan sebegitu, Madani ataupun perkara lain.
Any more questions?
Okay.
Is that all? Then thank you
Thank
very
you
much
all so much for coming today to this small conference room.
Small.
not the hotel that you
Terima kasih semua.
Okey, gambar.
Don't close your face. Don't
Yeah.
close your face.
Okay, we have to sit down.
Right, yes, the one closing now. Right.
Dua kejam.
Alright. Okay? Here first.
Here, please.
Okay, like here center,
Here.
please. Here.
Hello.
Yes.
Thank you.
Here center,
Alright,
center.
Alright. One here.
One here.
Okay, we have to do right first.
Right.
Okay, right
Center
middle.
here.
Middle.
Set middle. Okay, center.
Alright. Far left.
Okay, alright, left.
One more here. Hello. One more here.
Yes.
Then here.
I know.
Okay. Thank you.
One more here.
Okey.
Okay, serious, please. Serious. One here.
Okay, one more here. One more here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Terima kasih semua.
Boleh keluar. Kita buat pilih.
Dia auto save lah.
Dia auto,
Tak boleh adjust.